In the hallowed heart of Jerusalem, where ancient stones whisper tales of faith and power, a story unfolds that has echoed through the ages. It is the story of a man named Caiaphas, a high priest whose decisions shaped the course of history, entwining his legacy with the sacred narrative of Jesus Christ. This is no mere recounting of events. It is an invitation to journey into the depths of human motives, divine purpose, and the eternal struggle between truth and fear. Why did Caiaphas, cloaked in religious authority, orchestrate the trial that led to the crucifixion of an innocent man? What forces drove him to act with such chilling resolve? Join me, dear friends, as we step into this sacred mystery, peeling back the layers of time to uncover the heart of this pivotal moment in our shared faith. Imagine standing in the shadowed halls of Caiaphas's residence, the air thick with tension as a trial unfolds under the cover of night. The flickering torches cast long shadows and the weight of history presses down upon us. This is not just a story, it is a mirror reflecting our own choices, our own struggles with power, fear, and the call to truth. So, let us walk together with open hearts and seeking minds to explore the life of Caiaphas, the trial of Jesus, and the profound lessons that resonate across centuries. Stay with me, for in a few moments, the pieces of this sacred puzzle will begin to fall into place, revealing a truth that speaks to us all. Before we begin, I invite you to pause, to breathe, and to open your heart to this journey. If the story moves you, share it with others, that we may all reflect together on the mysteries of our faith. Now, let us dive into the heart of this tale. In the year 18 AD, under the iron grip of Roman rule, a man named Joseph ben Caiaphas ascended to the role of high priest in Judea. Appointed by the Roman prefect Valerius Gratus, Caiaphas stepped into a position of immense religious and political influence, a role that demanded both spiritual leadership and diplomatic finesse. Born around 14 BC, Caiaphas was no ordinary figure. He was a man of his time, navigating the delicate balance between the traditions of his people and the demands of an occupying empire. His tenure as high priest, lasting until 36 AD, was remarkable for its longevity, a testament to his skill in maintaining favor with both the Roman authorities and the Jewish Sanhedrin. Yet, to understand Caiaphas, we must see him not as a caricature of villainy, but as a man caught in the crucible of his era. The Judea of his day was a land of unrest, where the Jewish people yearned for liberation from Roman oppression. The role of high priest was not merely spiritual, it was a political office, one that required Caiaphas to mediate between the aspirations of his people and the unyielding power of Rome. His appointment by the Romans rather than by Jewish tradition placed him in a precarious position, forever balancing loyalty to his faith with the need to preserve order under foreign rule. Caiaphas's life was shaped by the world he inhabited, a world where every decision carried the weight of survival. As we reflect on his story, let us ask ourselves, how often do we, too, find ourselves torn between our ideals and the pressures of the world around us? Caiaphas's journey invites us to examine our own hearts, to seek the courage to act with integrity even when the path is fraught with difficulty. At the heart of Caiaphas's story lies a figure whose presence would challenge the very foundations of his world: Jesus of Nazareth. By the time Caiaphas encountered Jesus, the young teacher from Galilee had already begun to stir the hearts of the people. His teachings of love, forgiveness, and a kingdom not of this world drew crowds wherever he went, but they also unsettled the religious and political order. To Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin, Jesus was an enigma, a man whose words carried divine authority, yet whose actions seemed to threaten the fragile stability of Judea. The Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John paint a vivid picture of the growing tension between Jesus and the religious leaders. Jesus' miracles, such as healing the sick and casting out demons, were undeniable, yet they provoked outrage among the Pharisees and Sadducees. When Jesus drove the money changers from the temple, declaring, "Stop making my Father's house a place of business," John 2 verse 16, he struck at the heart of the religious system over which Caiaphas presided. This was no mere act of defiance, it was a prophetic challenge to a system that had grown complacent, prioritizing ritual over righteousness. For Caiaphas, Jesus' actions were more than a personal affront, they were a threat to the delicate balance he had worked so hard to maintain. The crowds that followed Jesus spoke of him as the Messiah, the long-awaited deliverer who would free Israel from Roman rule. Yet Jesus' message of a spiritual kingdom confounded these expectations, creating confusion and unrest. Caiaphas, as high priest, faced a dilemma. How could he preserve the authority of the Sanhedrin and the favor of Rome in the face of this growing movement? As we ponder this, let us consider, how do we respond when confronted with truths that challenge our own positions of comfort or control? The tension between Caiaphas and Jesus reached its climax in the events leading to the crucifixion. The Gospels recount how Jesus' teachings and actions increasingly alarmed the religious leaders. His claim to be the Messiah, his healings on the Sabbath, and his bold declarations about the temple's destruction were seen as direct challenges to their authority. In John 11 verses 47 to 48, the Sanhedrin gathers in distress, saying, "What are we to do? For this man performs many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." In this moment, Caiaphas speaks words that, though steeped in pragmatism, carry a profound irony. He declares, "It is better for you that one man should die for the people than that the whole nation should perish." John 11 verse 50. Unwittingly, Caiaphas prophesies the redemptive purpose of Jesus' death, a sacrifice that would not merely preserve a nation but offer salvation to all humanity. Yet, for Caiaphas, these words were a calculated strategy, a justification for eliminating a perceived threat. As we reflect on Caiaphas' decision, let us hold space for the complexity of his motives. He was not a man driven by malice alone, but by fear of upheaval, fear of losing the fragile order he had sworn to protect. How often do we, too, act out of fear rather than faith, choosing the path of expediency over the call to justice? Caiaphas' story reminds us that our choices, even those made with good intentions, can have consequences that echo through eternity. The night was heavy with the weight of destiny as Jesus, bound and betrayed, was led to the residence of Caiaphas, the high priest. In the dim glow of torches, a trial unfolded not in the grand halls of the Sanhedrin, but in the secretive confines of a private home. This was no ordinary proceeding. It was a moment that would alter the course of history, a moment where human fear clashed with divine purpose. Why did Caiaphas, a man of such authority, choose to conduct this trial in the shadows, far from the eyes of tradition? Let us step into this sacred drama, dear friends, and seek the truth that lies beneath the surface, a truth that speaks to the choices we all face when confronted with the call of justice. The trial of Jesus, as recounted in the Gospels, was a stark departure from the norms of Jewish law. The Sanhedrin, the council of 71 elders, was the rightful body to adjudicate matters of such gravity, yet Caiaphas convened only a fraction of its members, gathering them in haste within his own residence. This was no mere oversight, it was a deliberate act, one that raises profound questions about his intentions. The law required transparency, yet this trial was shrouded in secrecy. The law demanded a quorum, yet the council fell short. The law forbade trials on the eve of Passover, a sacred time for celebration, yet Caiaphas pressed forward. Consider the scene. Jesus stands before Caiaphas, surrounded by a handful of religious leaders, their faces hardened with resolve. The charges against him are vague accusations of blasphemy, of stirring unrest, of claiming to destroy the temple. Witnesses are summoned, but their testimonies falter, their words contradictory. Mark 14 verse 58 records one saying, "We heard him say, 'I will destroy this temple that is made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another, not made with hands.'" Yet such words, though provocative, echoed the warnings of prophets past and were hardly grounds for condemnation. Frustrated, Caiaphas takes a bolder approach, asking Jesus directly, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed?" Mark 14 verse 61. Jesus' response, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." Mark 14 verse 62 is a declaration of divine authority, a moment of unflinching truth. In that instant, Caiaphas tears his garments, proclaiming, "What further witnesses do we need? You have heard his blasphemy." Mark 14 verses 63 to 64. But let us pause and reflect, was this truly about blasphemy, or was it about fear? Fear that Jesus' words would unravel the authority of the religious elite, fear that his growing influence would provoke Roman retribution. Caiaphas' actions invite us to examine our own hearts. How often do we judge others not for their words, but for the threat they pose to our own sense of control? This trial, conducted in the shadows, reminds us that justice flourishes in the light of truth, not in the secrecy of fear. With the trial concluded, Caiaphas and the religious leaders wasted no time. Dawn had barely broken when they marched Jesus to the residence of Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor. Roman law reserved the power of capital punishment, and Caiaphas knew that only Pilate could authorize the execution he sought. The charges presented to Pilate were carefully crafted, shifting from religious accusations to political ones. They accused Jesus of claiming to be King of the Jews, a title that could be construed as a direct challenge to Roman authority. Yet Pilate, a man seasoned in the ways of governance, saw through the flimsiness of these claims. "I find no fault in this man," he declared, Luke 23 verse 4, sensing the undercurrents of envy and fear that drove the religious leaders. Pilate's reluctance to condemn Jesus reveals the complexity of this moment. He sought to defer responsibility, sending Jesus to Herod Antipas, the Tetrarch of Galilee, only for Herod to return him without judgment. Caught between the demands of the religious leaders and his own sense of justice, Pilate proposed a compromise, the release of a prisoner during Passover. He offered the crowd a choice between Jesus and Barabbas, a notorious criminal. Influenced by the chief priests, the crowd cried out for Barabbas's release and demanded Jesus's crucifixion. Pilate, washing his hands in a futile gesture of absolution, relented, delivering Jesus to the cross. This scene is a stark reminder of the power of collective fear and manipulation. The crowd, swayed by the voices of authority, chose to condemn an innocent man. Caiaphas, though not present in the crowd, had set this chain of events in motion, his influence rippling through the masses. As we reflect on this, let us ask ourselves, how often do we allow the clamor of the crowd to drown out the quiet voice of truth within us? The story of Caiaphas and Pilate challenges us to stand firm in our convictions even when the world demands conformity. The road to Golgotha was a journey of unimaginable suffering, yet it was also a journey of divine love. Jesus, bearing the weight of the cross, endured mockery, scourging, and the agony of crucifixion. As he hung upon the cross, darkness fell over the land, and his final words pierced the silence. "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit," Luke 23, verse 46. With his last breath, Jesus fulfilled the purpose for which he came, to offer himself as a sacrifice for the redemption of humanity. The crucifixion, commemorated each year on Good Friday, is not merely a historical event, it is the heart of our faith, a testament to the boundless love of God. For Caiaphas, the crucifixion marked the culmination of his efforts to eliminate the threat he perceived in Jesus. Yet, even as the cross stood stark against the sky, the story was far from over. The Gospel of Matthew recounts how, after Jesus' death, the religious leaders heard reports of his resurrection. Frightened by the implications, they bribed the soldiers guarding the tomb to spread a false story, say that his disciples came by night and stole him away while we were asleep, Matthew 28 verse 13. This desperate act reveals the depth of their fear, not only of Jesus' life, but of his enduring power. As we contemplate the crucifixion, let us hold in our hearts the profound mystery of Christ's sacrifice. Jesus' death was not a defeat, but a victory over sin and death, a victory that Caiaphas could not foresee. His story reminds us that human plans, no matter how carefully laid, cannot thwart the purposes of God. In our own lives, when we face moments of trial or loss, may we find hope in the truth that God's love is stronger than any cross we bear. The dawn of the third day broke over Jerusalem, and with it came a truth that would shake the foundations of the world. Jesus Christ had risen from the dead. The tomb, once sealed, stood empty, and the whispers of resurrection spread like wildfire. For Caiaphas, the high priest who had orchestrated Jesus' trial and crucifixion, this moment marked the beginning of a new challenge, one that would test the limits of his authority and reveal the futility of his efforts to silence the truth. Dear friends, as we draw near the close of this sacred journey, let us reflect on the aftermath of Caiaphas' actions and the enduring lessons they hold for our lives today. The resurrection of Jesus was not merely an event, it was a divine proclamation that God's love and power transcend the schemes of humanity. Yet, for Caiaphas and the religious leaders, it was a crisis. The Gospel of Matthew tells us that when reports of the empty tomb reached them, they acted swiftly to suppress the truth. They bribed the soldiers guarding the tomb, instructing them to spread a lie, say that his disciples came by night and stole him away while we were asleep, Matthew 28 verse 13. This desperate attempt to control the narrative reveals the depth of their fear, not only of Jesus' life, but of his victory over death itself. Caiaphas' actions in the wake of the resurrection reflect a heart hardened by fear and pride. He could not accept the possibility that Jesus was indeed the Messiah, for to do so would mean acknowledging the error of his ways. His story is a sobering reminder of the dangers of clinging to power and tradition at the expense of truth. In our own lives, we too face moments when we are called to let go of our certainties and embrace the transformative power of God's grace. Caiaphas' refusal to do so led to his eventual downfall, for history records that he was deposed from the high priesthood around 36 AD by the Roman legate Lucius Vitellius. The reasons for his removal are unclear, but they serve as a poignant reminder that human authority is fleeting in the face of divine truth. As we reflect on Caiaphas' legacy, let us also consider the broader implications of his choices. His role in the crucifixion was not an isolated act, but part of a larger tapestry of human weakness, fear, jealousy, and the desire for control. Yet, within this tapestry we see the golden thread of God's redemptive plan. Jesus' death and resurrection were not thwarted by Caiaphas' schemes, rather, they fulfilled the very purpose for which Christ came. In John 11 verses 51 to 52, we are told that Caiaphas, in declaring that it was better for one man to die for the people, unwittingly prophesied the salvation that Jesus would bring, not only for the nation of Israel, but for all of God's children scattered across the world. This paradox lies at the heart of our faith, that even in the darkest moments of human failure, God's light shines through. Caiaphas' story challenges us to examine our own hearts. Are there truths we resist because they threaten our comfort or status? Are there moments when we, like Caiaphas, choose expediency over justice? His life invites us to seek humility, to listen for the voice of God even when it challenges our deepest assumptions, and to trust that God's purposes will prevail. As we draw this journey to a close, let us stand together at the foot of the cross and before the empty tomb, marveling at the mystery of Christ's love. The story of Caiaphas is not merely a tale of a high priest who faltered, it is a mirror reflecting our own struggles, our own need for grace. Jesus, in his life, death, and resurrection, showed us the way of truth, the path of love that overcomes fear and division. Caiaphas, in his fear and resistance, reminds us of the cost of turning away from that path. Dear friends, this story is not confined to the pages of history, it lives in us, in the choices we make each day. Let us carry the lessons of Caiaphas' life into our own, to seek justice with courage, to embrace truth with humility, and to trust in the redeeming power of God's love. I invite you to share this reflection with others, to spark conversations about faith, forgiveness, and the transformative power of the resurrection. And I leave you with a question to ponder. In our own lives, how can we choose the way of Christ over the temptations of fear and control? Before we part, let us pause to give thanks for the gift of the story, for the light it sheds on our path. If this journey has touched your heart, consider liking and subscribing to continue exploring the mysteries of our faith together. And as you go forth, may you carry the peace of Christ, who conquered death and offers us life eternal. Until we meet again, walk in love, seek the truth, and trust in the God who makes all things new. Amen.